Hello everyone and welcome to the Deercast. If you're anything like me and you've gone out and bought a rifle scope with a ballistic turret, you've played around with it a little bit, think you know how it works, and sometimes it does, and sometimes you get the odd flyer where you think that's not quite what I sort of intended. You've probably plugged a load of information into some weird online website somewhere and got some of your ballistics information. You may or may not have used a chrono to get some of the information. What I'm getting at is it's probably all a bit of a mess. We're really lucky. Harry and I are here today at a British shooting show. We're on the Leica stand recording some podcasts, and today we're joined by, for this session, we're joined by Griff, one of the Leica sports ambassadors. Griff is probably going to kick me under the table for saying this, but he's somewhat of a long-range shooting expert, so he is going to teach us or tell us about the best way to go about getting your setup all your setup basically, in terms of how you get it all dialed in properly for your ballistics. I think you referred to it earlier as truing your setup.
Truing a setup, yeah.
That technical term.
Yeah, and there's depending on which model of rangefinder you've got, there's different ways of kind of optimising those systems as well.
Yeah.
Which I think we'll talk into. But I think what might be useful is to talk about the different products. So there's three kind of main products, like rangefinder products anyway. We'll talk about the limitations of each one, and then how to optimise and make use of the systems.
Yep. Okay. So, say you're like me. I've gone out and bought, a pair of Geovids and say a Fortis scope that's got a ballistic turret on it, and I've sat down with it and gone, right, what's the first thing I should do?
Well, the first thing you really need to do is establish that ballistic profile, right? And there's several ways to do that. So, and again, it all refers back to which model Geovid you've got. So if we look at the entry model, which is the HDR, that really does give you a basic, kind of a basic ranging system. So it'll just give you a line of sight, and also it'll give it an equivalent horizontal range based on the angle, the angle it's taken that range from. Now, if you want to best optimise that with your system, what you really need to do is input your data onto your rifle system. And when we were chatting about this, we do this in the form of the calibrated ballistic turret. So we need to establish our drops first. Establish our drops to whatever range we're going to be using this system at. So let's say most UK shooters, we shoot quite modest in the UK, 200 to 300 yards. So we need to establish our drops for that. So there's two ways we could do that. We can do this via the Leica app by inputting our data. And the data we need really for this system is our ballistic coefficient and our velocity.
And would you say people ought to go out and check those themselves, as in put the rifle over a chrono, or literally take it off the box? Or
in an ideal world, yes. You need to really chronograph your rifle to get the most accurate muzzle velocity possible. Now, not everyone owns a chronograph. You can always borrow a chronograph. And if you can't borrow a chronograph, there's different means of establishing your velocity. One of those is running it through a ballistic app, okay, and that will give you back. So if you shoot your rifle, find your true true range drops, run that through a ballistic app, it will give you a readout of your velocity.
So when you say that, you mean literally put a piece of paper at, say, 200 metres, aim it dead on and see what the difference is. So say it's dropped 5 centimetres, you kind of reverse engineer that back through the app.
Through your ballistic app, and that will give you that will engineer, so that will give you your velocity. And then you can import that into the Leica app, and then you can form your ballistic turret based off that.
So you're able to sort of ground truth or confirm your existing ballistic profile by doing that truing exercise. Do you need to do just one, or do you need to do like two ranges, like one at 100 and one at 300?
Well, you should always shoot at 100 first to establish your base zero.
Yep.
Because if you haven't got a true accurate zero, then all your data beyond that is going to be tainted.
Yep.
And then the further you can shoot, the more accurate that those drops are going to be. So ideally, for the HDR system, ideally out to 500 yards is kind of ideal for that system, if you can. And then you work back and you can true your muzzle velocity that way. The other way of doing it is the same, so you establish your true drops by shooting in real world. You establish that, and then you compare those drops to the Leica preset drops. And then from there you're able to pick a pre-calibrated turret to the closest match for that trajectory, and then fit that, and then run that with your HDR binoculars. And then what that gives the the shooter then is a really simple system where, especially with the HDR binocular, where they can range a target. It will give them an equivalent horizontal range based on that trajectory and the angle, and then all they do is dial that shoot to range onto that elevation turret, and they're able to engage that target. Yeah. The limitation of that system is, what it doesn't really take into account is, one, atmospherics, which for the UK shooter or the UK recreational deer stalker is not such of a big deal, because the atmospherics really come into play after 600 yards, and that's when we really need to account for that, and also the wind. And the wind can be a bit of a deal, which you need to address. But maybe look at that in a different podcast or something. Yeah. So those are the limitations. It doesn't account for atmospherics and it doesn't account for wind. Yeah. So if we step up slightly then to the Geovid Pro, what that does give us then is a kind of dumbed down version of the Applied Ballistics. It's called the Applied Ballistics Lite. So what this gives us is a ballistic solution out to 800 metres, 875 yards. And the reason why it's capped at that is because most 308 rifles will hit transonic at that range. So most bullets will become transonic, and then there's a few issues associated with transonic at that ranges. So it limits that ballistic feedback to 875 yards. But what that does give you, within that bracket, within that spectrum of 875 yards, it will give you a wind adjustment, which you can set through the Leica app. It will also do drop, angle, and also atmospherics as well. So it's taking into account the temperature, the atmospheric or barometric pressure as well.
Yeah. And are you able to integrate that with a sort of wind meter as well?
Yep. So you can slave a Kestrel unit off the Geovid Pro. Yep. So you can actually run the full Applied Ballistics suite through your Kestrel device, and then obviously gives the readout through the binocular there.
And so I'm probably muddying the waters here, but in terms of the custom dial, so say you buy a Fortiscope or a Magnuscope, I think I'm getting this right, yeah. It'll come with either a MIL or MOA adjustment ballistic turret, if you get the one with ballistic turret, but you can then swap out on those two models that turret if you wanted to for one of the custom Leica
for a custom foil, which will give you like range readings. Yeah. And I really like that system, and the reason why I like that system is not always are you going to have the ability to adjust for MILs or MOA. So let's say, I'll give a brief example of where stalking stags in Scotland, okay, and your stalker gives you a range of 230 yards. Right, you take a shot, unfortunately you miss, or worst happens, you make a marginal shot, and the deer then runs to, let's say, 320 yards and stops and presents a shot. Now, not always will a stalker be able to say, right, now you need to apply 4 minutes of angle or 5 minutes of angle or 0.9 tenths of a mil. He might just give you a feedback on the range. Now, if you've got the custom ballistic turret set up, it's quite easy then to flick to that range on your turret and just take a shot.
So the advantage of those turrets is, from what you've just described, it will have, say, 100 metre, 200 metre, 300 metres literally written on those turrets, so you can literally just go, right, click, okay.
And we all know how dynamic hunting is, so quite often in the mountains, when you're hunting these mountain animals, ibex and goats, these animals are moving all the time. So when you initially range something, let's say it's 350 yards, 400 yards, and you dial 2 mils or 3 mils or whatever your ballistic setting is, and then inevitably that animal moves. If that animal moves 50 or 75 yards, all you need to do is compensate using that custom turret without referring to any dope. Okay, so then you're not breaking position, you're not referring to a ballistic app. Okay, you can just quickly make that minor adjustment on the turret and then engage with that shot.
And I'm right in thinking you can't get the custom dial for the ampless model of scopes, or can you?
I think you can, but okay. It's there's quite a lot of software online as well where you can print your own, and what I actually do is custom make my own, so it's got the range settings and also the index marks for what, if it's MIL or MOA, and then I stick that on myself.
Yeah. I suppose the other thing is if you use the same scope on multiple rifles, you can presumably have different turrets for different
turrets,
calibers.
yeah, exactly.
So you can sort of pull out your 308 one and drop on your 243 one.
Exactly.
There's
really
a sort of
easy
range.
to change. Yeah. So that system worked really, really well for me. And in the heat of the moment, it's just absolutely foolproof.
Much quicker.
And you don't have to revert to mils. You don't have to revert to MOA. It's just a range, and everybody understands 200, 300, 350, 400.
Yeah. I suppose especially if you're taking somebody out who maybe isn't familiar with mil dots or numbering click systems, it's very straightforward to say set the scope to 200 yards or whatever. It's just it's a universal language.
Yeah.
And I can see that panic happening to me. Like, say the worst happened, exactly like you say, I don't know, you wound something at 200 metres, is because in my mind I know on my Fortis scope I've got to go 2, 4 or 6 mils of adjustment, depending on whether it's 150, 200 or 250 in terms of metres. But if something went out to 250, I'd have to quickly go, oh fuck, I've got to go on my app, check what 250 is, then I'd have to dial it in, and in the heat of the moment I can see myself making a
it's not all based on if the scenario goes wrong. There's other real world applications. Let's say professionals that are using it to call quite large amounts of deer, right? And we're shooting quite often multiple numbers from the same group. You shoot an animal, all right, you check it's dead, then the animals are inevitably moved, you stop and present another shot. It's much easier then to make that compensation with that ballistic turret as it is to go back into your ballistic suite or your ballistic program and then try and make another adjustment.
Yeah. So if you wanted to go for the sort of the full no holes barred system, you were shooting, let's say in Scotland on the Hinds, and you could be encountering some slightly rangier shots, or maybe you're going abroad to shoot mouflon or something like that.
Yeah.
What's the sort of full fat version of the?
Well, the full fat version is the GeoVid AB Plus, and that really it's the same binocular, so it's the same housing, same glass, same internals, but all it is that the whole suite is unlocked. So you've got the full comprehensive applied ballistic suite unlocked at your fingertips, and it really is a powerful ballistic engine. So that utilises then all the real sort of intricacies of long range and the applications you need to delve into. So it's spin drift, it's aerodynamic jump, it's yacht force effect, Coriolis, atmospherics. It really kind of goes into the weeds there, and you've got all that at your disposal.
And best of all, it comes in a really cool colour.
Really cool dark earth colour.
Yeah, so you've gone full fat.
Yeah. So that, but I think what needs to be pointed out is if you've purchased a pair of GeoVid Pros with the light, you can upgrade that software to the AB Plus as well.
Oh, really?
So you don't need to then get rid of that binocular and buy a new one. The software update is available to unlock that suite.
And that's done through the Leica app,
It's done through Leica, yeah.
Okay.
It's just a small one-off payment, unlocks a suite, and then you've got the comprehensive applied ballistic suite. And it gives you all the G1, G7 custom drag curves for all the bullets within the applied ballistics library. So it really is a powerful tool.
Does that unlock because you were saying the range on the what was it, the AB light is limited to sort of 800-ish yards.
Yeah.
Do you get a further range unlocked with the pluses, or?
No. So I think what needs to be highlighted is it doesn't affect the rangefinder function. It's just a ballistic. It's just a ballistic solution that's been capped. So the laser will work out to its 3,200 meters on both those units. Yep. It's just the ballistic output that's limited on the light.
You'd be pretty mad to shoot at anything living at any range more than I don't know.
Yeah,
that seems.
I mean, we do shoot quite modestly in the UK, but it's not to say that other people don't do things a little bit different. And I think that probably leads on to a real good time to talk about where these units fit within the UK context. So I think the HDR is a really good unit for the recreational deer stalker in the UK. Not really shooting beyond 250 yards. Wants an entry level rangefinder unit that just gives them a simple range with an angle measurement, good glass, modest price. I think that HDR unit is an ideal unit, and especially if you optimise it with that custom turret, that really gives you a good turnkey solution out to 300, possibly 400 yards as well. If you really sort out your wind. I think that the GeoVid Pro With the light version, it's really good for those sportsmen and women who are travelling abroad, doing a little bit of mountain hunting, Kyrgyzstan, Spain, going to America, mid-Asia, for example, or down in Africa, where they want to push the boundaries a little bit with extended ranges. Maybe people looking to, break into the world of long-range shooting within the realms of kind of them intermediate ranges, 600 to 900 meters. I think this is an ideal binocular, and then it gives them the option to upgrade a little bit later on down the line when they start to learn their trade and become better at that craft. I think that's a really good unit. I also think the GeoVid Pro Lite is a really good unit for guides, because what you can actually do, if you've got a client turning up with a rifle, you can build a ballistic profile for it from that rifle, build it into your binocular. Yeah. So as a guide, when you're ranging an animal, you've got a really good indication of what that rifle's doing ballistically at them ranges, and you can aid that client, and it also gives you an idea of what's going on as well.
I hadn't thought about that before, but actually, because I've got a pair of GeoVid Pros, and on my app, because I've got two different rifles, I've got different profiles for each, and so depending on which one I'm going with, I just literally swap them over. But I hadn't thought that, actually, as you just said, you could add a third one, or even fourth or fifth for someone else you're going with, and then you can go, so say you and I went stalking Harry, and be like, oh Harry, that deer's 250, so I know on your rifle you're going to need to aim, I don't know, 6 centimetres high or whatever. That's really good
because you might have a client turn up and he has not got a custom ballistic turret. He might be operating off MOA or Mills, and if you need to give him a ballistic adjustment, then it needs to be in whatever units he's working on.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So that's the R's, the Pros, and then final model.
So these are for the people that really are serious about long range. Really want to get into the weeds of it, push the boundaries of the weapon system out to as far as they can go, and this really is the model for that.
I think probably fair to say that the price sort of follows suit as well in terms of those three different models, in that, as you'd expect, it does kind of incrementally go up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the final thing I wanted to ask was about the sort of mapping feature that you have on all the GeoVid Pros that have?
All the GeoVid Pros have got the mapping feature. I thought when I saw it, maybe a little bit gimmicky, but maybe for the American market, actually very useful feature. Very useful feature for the type of stalking I do, which is pretty much all open hill or shooting onto restock areas. As you know, you can shoot an animal, maybe across a valley or a canyon. By the time you get down and over there, the terrain looks completely different. Some areas you go, it's almost impossible to locate that animal without a dog. But now with this mapping feature, it just walks you straight onto that area. Really, really useful feature. I think we kind of had a chat about last night about the application for Kyrgyzstan. So I went to Kyrgyzstan in October. We spotted a really nice group of billies a couple of miles away. And because of the terrain, it turned into an 11-hour stalk where we lost sight of those animals for at least 9-10 hours before getting back on them. And that mapping feature would have been absolutely ideal in that situation.
And in terms of how that works with the binoculars, you pair your phone to the binocular, then when you range something, it drops a pin onto a map for you to then follow that.
It works through Google Maps and it works through Basemap International. When it's used through Basemap International, it is a very, very serious tool. You can make use of all the 3D mapping that it's got, or all the features that come with the Basemap International, which really is laid down for the hunting community, and it really is a useful feature.
I haven't gone quite that far yet. I've used the Google Map version. I was saying to Bjorn earlier, it was really funny because I used it, I think probably in like sort of October time, shot a fallow pricket, and it literally dropped inside some wood, and I was up in a high seat, and it was just at that really like dusky time that fallow love to come out, and I thought, I'm going to test this mapping feature because that way I can literally walk straight to it. And it's really bizarre having like Google Maps be like, now turn left, and you'll find your deer just inside the wood. You're like, okay, this is pretty cool. It's a really cool.
It is useful, and the good thing about the Basemap International is it works offline. So if you download offline maps, it will work in places like Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, places where there is no mobile phone signal, where Google Maps won't work.
Yeah.
So very useful.
Very interesting.
Amazing. Well, Griff, thank you so much for joining us and giving us a really good rundown of all of those features. That's been absolutely fascinating.
You've completely blown my mind.
Yeah. Thank you. Welcome. Pleasure.
Thank you.
I'm feeling very tempted. Thank you very much for joining.